Mark, it's great to sit down and have a conversation. Thanks for inviting us down to Jumeirah Zabeel Saray.
Absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Mark, I'd love to, for people listening and watching, just to get a feel for your history, your background, maybe your first ever job in hospitality. You're obviously GM now of an absolutely beautiful property. But take us back to day one when you were thinking about what we call the wonderful world of hospitality.
Thank you. You know, it was over 40 years ago, which for me just feels like yesterday in one way, but it's been a huge journey in Melbourne, Australia. Started washing dishes as an apprentice chef and built up my career in that way. And my just following opportunities. So as a qualified chef at the age of 19, was able to travel over to Perth, Western Australia, work in the Burswood Casino, which has opened my eyes to a bigger world in terms of luxury, and able to meet other chefs that inspired me to travel more. I thought that I was just going to travel a bit around Australia and I'd be done. And one of the chefs I met was working at the Dorchester, and he said to me, listen, if you ever go overseas, you need to go and work at the Dorchester in London. So I took a journey back to Melbourne, hometown, saved up more money, and off we went. My friend and I, we knocked on all the doors, the Savoy and Grosvenor House and a Connaught and all the grand big hotels. This is back in the 90s. And the Dorchester had just gone through its renovation at that time. And that was its first 60 years. And I got an opportunity to join the Dorchester, which was incredible. There I was able to cook for the Queen, in the top table, do the polo matches in Cirencester with Prince Charles, or King Charles now. And these were moments in my life that I'll never forget. And it was the time in my life where I really saw what premium luxury was and what it was to serve at that level, and the commitment that we had to take to make it happen every single day. And it didn't matter whether it was Michael Jackson, the President of the United States, you're always there delivering at this certain level. And from that moment on, my career shifted another notch.
Just can you talk us through those moments, because the Dorchester is iconic. We actually just came from the new Dorchester de Lana here in Dubai, but I was in the Dorchester in the UK 2 weeks ago. Talk about the work ethic and the just, you know, working every single hour under the sun. Because I did my shift in kitchen. Now I can't imagine it was anything like the stress of the Dorchester. But give us an insight into that.
I've got one story which I'll save for my book when I do that, because I think it's really something that maybe these days people don't go through. We work minimum 16 to 18 hours a day. If you're on morning shift, that started at 7, but you should get there before 6 just to get the equipment you need to put away into your section. If you're working on fish section like I was in the grill, then you maintained your area like a war zone. And the other sections were all quite fierce about protecting their area, and everyone was fighting for excellence. And at the top was the food pass where the food would go up to the restaurants. And it was always critically looked at and sent back if it wasn't right. And the detail and the quality was there every single day. So there's a lot of discipline that you had to maintain. A very fierce environment. Work environments these days aren't so fierce. But you learned that you were working for something greater than you. You were working to serve this institution called Dorchester. And you knew that whenever you left, and you were told and reminded that wherever you travel around the world since you left Dorchester, people will always look back and say, oh, you work there. And then that gave you that edge. And so there was long days, hard asks, but we got to serve and look after the most amazing customers of our time. I remember walking into the Dorchester around the outside, and the cars had stopped, and Princess Diana had walked out of the Dorchester on a Thursday lunch, and there I was face to face with her, you know, and you're like, wow, that was, you know, a moment in my life, right? And I still get shivers now. Cooking for the Queen, the state banquets. These are moments in your life where you sort of, it reinstalls it, because as the journey goes in your career, you're going to look back on times when they're tough, and you're going to say, you know, how do I get through that? And then you look and you say, this is what I learned, and I can take that forward and teach others.
Yeah. I can only imagine, because even when you walk into the Dorchester in London, there's an aura about it. So to actually represent the brand must have been, incredible.
Yeah, very proud. I was, you know, I remember at the Savoy, I went for an interview, and I got told, I got right into the front door before I got the job at the Dorchester, and then they said, oh, you're Australian. No, there's too many of you out. And I got the job, and I have the jacket at the Dorchester, and I was working in the fish section in the morning, We ran out of Dover soles, and the chef said to me, go in a taxi, go to the Savoy, and go into this entrance, walk in there, speak to the sous chef, he'll give you a tray of Dover sole. I walked in there, they take me through this kitchen, and there I was so proud with my Dorchester badge, thinking, well, I've made it, and it's a badge of honor, definitely.
And you're at another badge of honor now, which is Jumeirah Group, but you started in a kitchen in Australia, and now you're the general manager of one of the most renowned properties and brands in the world. That is why I love hospitality, because there's just no ceiling. So can you maybe talk us through the middle part of that career and into some more of the managerial roles that you received?
It takes people to know people and to connect, and they'll help you on the journey. And I hope that I do that for my people. And with me, I did a long walk one day in the afternoon with Simon Barlow, who was our area vice president for Hilton. At the time, I was down in Rangali Island as executive chef of the Conrad. And he said to me, what do you want to do with your future? And I said, maybe I want to be an executive chef of another bigger hotel. He said, no, I see something in you. You could be a senior manager outside of the kitchen. And sort of dangled that carrot that you could become a general manager in the future. And with that, I was set an assignment, look, we want you to become the food and beverage director at our new flagship Hilton Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. But you need to first go to Tokyo and prove yourself. No promises. If you prove yourself from an entrepreneurial point of view, we will then, give you the opportunity to go for this role. And Japan, I went and it opened up all doors for me. And culinary-wise, I was able to expand my love for the quality of ingredients and working with people. And Simon's support allowed me to do that. And 2 years later, the restaurant was very successful and got great exposure. And I'd sort of done my job. They said to me, okay, this hotel is going to open in Malaysia. You need to go back. And that was the step out of the kitchen into, as a food and beverage director, to open up the flagship property for Hilton in Asia Pacific. And then from that moment onwards, I never looked back. I then went through my management journey. And it was only because of Simon and that support around that moment that opened that door in my mind to it.
Was there a cultural difference that you had to get used to? Because I remember being in the kitchen and the profanities and you can't necessarily do that out in a restaurant in front of guests. There's a bit of a closed door locker room style environment of a kitchen. Was there a cultural difference? Because back in the 90s in the kitchen, I can imagine
it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
It was back in the days of the younger versions of Ramsay and all, just shouting and pushing and shoving. And I've got scars to prove it from the Dorchester as well. And then going into Japan, it's more refined. It's quite tough, but they're mentally tougher as well. They're very hard on their own people. But as I moved into the front line of running the restaurant from the front, I had to sort of adjust how I speak to people. And so if you learn that's how people did that to the others, but I don't need to do that to them. I need to focus on quality and speak around the actual product we're trying to deliver and inspire them to get better rather than to push them down. And it was an interesting shift. So as you then move to front of house, you're more about inspiring rather than pushing. And that's my management style shift as well.
Okay.
So that's the transition moment.
Amazing. I'd love to get into your leadership in a moment. I think can we just finish off on the Maldives? And maybe some of the resorts you worked there before we get into where you are today, because I find it such a fascinating place for tourism. Yeah,
it is. I mean, going out there, and I did 3 stints, and each time it was like, okay, that's done, I'll move on, and got called back for the second time. So the first time, as we spoke about earlier briefly, I was in the Conrad, which was open as a Hilton, and there we dreamt big. And what really inspired me about as being executive chef in the Maldives in those days was that it was uncharted waters. You could literally do anything you want, and no one had really put a ceiling on anything. So we were dreaming about going underwater and doing a restaurant one evening after a few red wines, and suddenly we were with the owners and we had this discussion, and they did the research, and we opened the first in the world underwater restaurant through a conversation over a glass of wine. This was done. And the payback on that was within a few months, first in the world, obviously. Then coming back, doing the journey, like I said, and I worked through Malaysia and got a call into the Maldives to be part of the team as general manager of Hua Fushi, which was a boutique luxury hotel, first in Maldives to have infinity edge swimming pools in every room, These days, that's normal. Fiber optics in the pool, these days are normal. And we had an underground wine cellar with 8,000 bottles of wine and a beautiful journey around food and beverage. And also a spa. We had the first in the world underwater spa. So I was then running this beautiful hotel, and we really wanted to market it. And that's when we got involved in music. So we got partnered, and we connected through my connections over the journey running hotels. I met Raven, who's the DJ behind Buddha Bar in Paris. Yeah. And we asked him to come, and we wanted him to produce an album with us. We'd seen the success of Hotel Cost and whatnot. So that you're talking again about 2004, no celebrity DJ or any music collaboration that happened in Maldives yet at that time. So we made that happen. We brought Raven and we created the CD, and it got listed with all of the other Buddha Bar CDs around the world. And now we put out carefully 6 pages of our brochure inside the middle of the CD. That's when people were buying CDs. And that Huafan Fushi Volume 2 and 3 came out, very successful. And that's how we marketed a standalone brand. And that's the other exciting thing about Maldives is you can create a brand there because of the attraction to it, and then get it and distribute it well through wholesale market as well. So I really learn a lot about myself and marketing what we do through our passions. My third time back was with One and Only, which is an iconic brand. With Dorchester, you've got world-renowned, huge history. One and Only, a younger brand, but has a lot of love, a lot of premium customers attracted to Maldives through One and Only. And we got there to serve and look after the most amazing guests, high demanding. As general manager, Spotlight, running such an iconic hotel. I loved every single moment of it. It was 24/7. It's all of you. But through that, I was able to create and develop elements in the hotel that are there, which are my legacy as well.
Is there I suppose living on an island and then working on an island, and you were there for quite a while, right? In the Maldives, how do you mentally deal with
cage.
that?
People say, "Oh, firstly, amazing, you live in Maldives." Then you tell them it's 24/7, and that's where the discipline around that I'd learned earlier around what we do at work, but also focusing on quality. Elements of discipline then transfer into looking after yourself, and I think that's where my fitness journey started.
Okay.
By starting to plan out goals, we'd spoken about it as well, having a goal in 6 weeks and in 3 months, and I'm going to run this marathon and I'm going to do it for this charity, was some of the things I set at play. And that was the trick. So I ran 7 marathons. I done 3 New York marathons, all trained in Maldives. I ran on the Great Wall of China. We raised money for charities in Maldives for children, underprivileged children in Maldives. So we're able to do and connect up some of that. And then I found those passions. So that's what kept me going.
Yeah.
If you don't have those outside elements, you're going to get consumed by this, the pressure and the whole work. Yeah. And you're going to get sick, mentally and physically.
Yeah. It's, I'm big into my fitness, as we've spoken about before. We'll get on to fitness maybe another time, but just quickly, how do you train for a marathon on an island in the Maldives?
Discipline again. You need to get up early and do those runs, the trainer on the bike, and then program it. I'm a big believer of programming the week. Okay. So you've got your schedule, you put them in, you put the commitment in there, and you just go to bed, and then you put that first foot forward and off you go. And once that momentum starts, and for me personally, I've got the end goal, then the daily things can happen. And I think it's a discipline around that planning.
But let's talk about the kilometers, right? Because if I go down Kite Beach and I run up from Mandarin to the start of the Burj and back, it's 20K.
Yeah.
And I know, and I can do that a few times, and there's my marathon. How do you do it on an island?
One and Only was a 5-kilometer loop, so I was able to loop that around. But then with hills, what I did is I got a tractor out, and we had this big beach. So I built a 10-meter hill, and then and my team was laughing at me. I had a mask, which constricted my breathing, and I had a vest, and I would do these runs up and down the hill, and my team would say, "Who is this crazy man?" But that's what gave me that extra piece of endurance as well.
Love it.
So you have to get creative.
Yeah, I can sense that. We're at a beautiful property right now. Everyone knows Jumeirah Group as this incredible luxury brand that's kind of the heart and soul of this region. Can you talk us through this property? Can you give us a bit of an insight into it? Rooms, villas, facilities, team members?
Totally. Look, it's such a privilege to come to, again, an iconic property that's been here for many years. It was developed as an Ottoman palace set in the 1400s, and it really wanted to inspire, bring that element of those days gone by alive again. And we wanted guests to feel that they were living in a palace. So this was designed with that intent, with no hesitation in how they've put the opulence around the gold and all the trimmings. So it's really an honor to be able to work through that and bring it alive again today. And ensuring my tenure as general managers, I inspire our teams to sort of live that as well and let customers understand the journey, whether it's the beautiful architecture, but also bringing some of the restaurants alive to today. So there's needs and wants of today that wasn't 14 years ago when the property was being opened and getting through the pre-opening. So here we're sitting in our Japanese restaurant. So this is a Tokyo-inspired jazz fusion, which when I lived in Japan for 2 years, these were the two main ingredients that I fell in love with in Japan. There's a real imperial element to Tokyo as well when you're there. And so it's through the food, which is an izakaya style sharing Japanese food, we bring that alive. And so we're modernizing or bringing it to today. And we're doing that on the beach. Our beach club Zenzi is something we opened last year, which is this beautiful boho, whimsical feeling down there, lightened it up and freshened the feeling. It hadn't been touched for all the years since we've opened. So this is the journey as we go around the property now, is how we're touching some of those spaces and just reimagining them again.
Yeah.
But never will we lose the Ottoman-inspired element.
And how big is it? How many rooms? How many villas? How many guests do you have every day?
Yeah, 406 rooms over 6 floors. As you go higher, the rooms get bigger. We've got this beautiful grand imperial suite on the top, which looks over the whole palm. It's a beautiful place for staying, and a wonderful dinner as well can be done on the balcony, and that's beautiful. The villas themselves, we have 36 royal villas. You can also purchase these villas now as well, but it's also framing the villas is this pool, 100 meters around, so you can swim a few laps around that pool. A beautiful pool, and then they've both got accesses to the beach and dedicated private cabanas. So the beach itself is very quiet. Those long walks and runs, and the water itself has got a great inlet from the outside on our left where the ocean comes through. So you see the currents coming through and the water's quite fresh.
We've got a lot of competition on this side of the palm. Definitely. Some of your old companies you used to work with are kind of either side of you.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate yourself, not just being a Jumeirah Group property, but also with what's around here on the palm?
I think that we go back to a few things. One of them is this Ottoman-inspired element. We really feel that everyone else has got their story to tell. Ours is around this Ottoman palace that you're staying in, where we're 400 beautiful rooms, about 700 guests on average here on a daily basis. A lot of families, that's our biggest focus. We love the staycation element to that as well. We really encourage our local people who are living in the region to come and stay with us over the weekends. But families is one of our strong points. We've just reimagined the beautiful theatre that we have, which is this, West End style theatre. We're bringing the shows in for family as much as adults, and really giving opportunity for our guests staying in-house to enjoy a show while they're here, which I think is really important as well. And that's a unique element. No one else has got a theatre like that, and I think that's very special for us. So that's where we want to tailor in this boutique. We're a grand hotel, but we want to put in the attention to detail and experiences.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I can give you some feedback. My very good friend is staying with her family here, and they stayed here during COVID in one of the royal villas, and they looked for other properties that gave them the same feel for a family environment, and they couldn't find one, so they're back again for a few weeks. So correct me if I'm wrong, if you have 700 guests here on any given day, you probably have around 1,500 team members, maybe anywhere from 1,000
Well, it's around 700 full-time, and then we flexed up.
You flex up, okay.
But the front line is core trained, 780 to be exact.
Okay.
And then the support services help out behind the scenes.
So if you have a really busy resort day, you could be up to 1,000 with support staff.
Yeah.
How many people did you have in Maldives?
So one and only, I had over 780, which we flexed up to 900.
Wow.
For 120 rooms.
Incredible.
Yeah. But there we were taking care of beaches as well.
So going from being in a hard environment in the kitchen in the Dorchester, like a locker room style environment where the chefs do what the chefs do, we all know it from watching Gordon Ramsay, to having to lead, huge amount of people. Like, how do you do that? And how do you lead from the front? What are your leadership styles?
I think the shift that I learned through the journey would be translated as a transformative style of leadership, which really tries to inspire and lead by example, but also to technically be able to advise and correct and coach and mentor. So the football style, the locker room style is to more get around me being the coach and inspiring. They got to kick the goal. We've got to ensure they got the best environment. And so my style sort of leads around those elements because technically I can drill down and smell the croissant or understand the operational concern, the pressure points, and then I'm looking at how I'm going to clear that. Yeah. I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to clear it so that we can get success. So for me, it's always about small percentage gains. I'm always looking at those little elements, how we can get better. That never ends. Yeah. The journey never ever ends for me on that. And that means that our team needs to constantly think in the same way. So I want to inspire them to be thinking about how they can get that marginal gain. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a Man United fan, and Ineos just took over, and David Brailsford was all about the 1% marginal improvements for the cycling team that went on to dominate. Do you see a lot of crossover between your sports training and...
100%.
Yeah.
So, I train 6 days a week myself, and I try to use that as an inspiration for my team as well. I try to let them know what I'm doing every morning before I come to work, because my mind then can be fresh and I'm switched in. But also I'm pushing myself that little bit more. Age of 55, I want to show others around me that yes, you can do that. And I think that's also part of leadership, is that you need to walk the talk. That's important.
I love that. Appreciate it. I think if we were to talk about a topic that is everywhere right now, and I think sometimes is it a little bit of marketing, where's the proof behind it, and that's sustainability. I know it's a massive focus, and I know you've done a lot of great work here. Maybe you could talk us through some of the parts, and how meaningful is it to the team?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a lot of talk is going on in the industry, and I think it's really important to have facts and to be sure that you start with something that you can continue. And so whilst I don't believe that everybody is going to complete 100% off the grid too quickly, that hopefully that will happen, you need to start somewhere, and then you need to do that really well and then get incrementally better, as we said earlier. So for me, my first obvious one was water. Something in Maldives we've been bottling quality drinking water for years, for 20 years plus. It's been normal. So when I came to the hotel, I said to myself, I'm definitely going to bring this here. And so as we've been working with Nordac, who we partnered with in Maldives, so had Jumeirah started the conversation with them. And so the actual bottles and the bottling plant, which I'd taken the Jumeirah team through in my previous hotel, had now appeared here. So I was able to open up our full-blown bottling plant last year, which I was super proud of. So the elimination of plastics is one of the first goals, and the biggest one was the water bottles. And then the audit on the entire property of all plastics that we use single use has been done. And by percentage, we then will have a goal where we can go back to a supplier and say, look, how can we change that? Like, for instance, now this straw is biodegradable. So how do we switch them over so that everything that we do, we can start to reduce down by percentages? So nothing will be done overnight. We try and clear out the big goals first and be easy wins. Now, as we move forward to other elements, we partnered with a company that could actually produce a vertical farm in the hotel. Now, not just a gimmick, but actually produces 200 kilos a month, 200 kilos a month, which gives us 18 varieties of lettuces, which are used throughout the property. So now, not only where we've built it around this beautiful venue where you can have farm-to-table experience, where we create these menus around sustainable ingredients as well, which is fished here locally and sourced, and camel milk and honey and other elements, we actually then put it into the menu. So that's the journey we're on. How could we bring more containers to increase more varieties would be my next step, right? So that we can become, the more we can So we're reducing carbon miles by delivering those ingredients from Australia, flies here, lands into a cold storage out in the desert, gets delivered here every day. We cut all those carbon miles by growing it right here.
Now, I was blown away when I heard from another guest we had on the podcast before that the plastic bottles were produced in the UAE. They were flown empty to Europe. They were filled up and they were flown back to the UAE. And you're just like, wow.
Okay.
But listen, we're in Jumeirah Group. It's luxury. It's 5-star luxury.
Yes.
And I used an example before where I was in, I judge hotels and luxury sometimes on their bathrooms.
Yes.
And how nice they are. It's a weird thing I do, but one of the lower starred properties that I was in, they would have the electronic tissue that you touch and it goes down sheet by sheet by sheet. Now that didn't scream luxury to me, but I get the fact that it prevents people rolling out a million sleeves of paper and wasting it. Whereas you come into a luxury property and you have a beautiful rolled hand towel every time per use, but it is luxury. So like, how do we blend as an industry, still providing, because I'm spending a lot of money to stay here.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily want you to, I don't want to use the word cheapen my stay, but because you're trying to be sustainable, you lessen the service. How do you?
And I don't think you can. I think you can't compromise in this journey of blending sustainability with luxury. We can't compromise one, right? Equally, we have to introduce the sustainability elements in ways that can last. Yeah. So you don't have these flash moments and then the reality is it doesn't work. So for me, it's about creating this guilt-free luxury. So you don't feel guilty, but you're enjoying the luxury moment. And how do you to do that? So it's got to start with what I just said before. I think that the lettuce is grown here on the property that's sustainable. Okay, how do we go step by step? The straws, done. So one by one, that's the journey, because then you can actually monitor it and ensure that the luxury. Then when you go into greenfield projects, for example, when you're building a villa, and you'd look at you'd reverse engineer and say, look, how much energy can we produce naturally, and then how much will that give us? Right, let's build a room by this many square meters, and the rest of it has to be outside, and this will be air conditioned from this natural resource. So I think a lot goes back to design. Okay. You need to design with that purpose.
You also have something around sustainability, which is very close to my heart, because I grew up on a farm and my dad is still a very active farmer, which is your farm to table concept at Arcadia. Can you talk us through, the ideation of that process, how the guests have reacted to it?
The guests have really enjoyed being able to, because you see when you walk outside, you'll see this container and it's beautifully lit and all the lettuces are growing on rotation. And the team is doing a great job there. And as I said earlier, it's producing 200 kilos a month for all the restaurants. But on the table itself, we've got this show kitchen and a table right beside the whole environment. So you now step into this garden, and then we can actually highlight those ingredients that are grown there, but they're also the sustainable ones. And we've created menus around that, vegan, fish menus, which really highlight those elements. The other part which we do, and the guests love that experience, is that our Indian chef, our Lebanese chef can come and tailor make a menu for you using these ingredients combined with their techniques. And then you can have a cooking class and you can stand there with your family, which we've done, where you learn those dishes and then sit down and eat them. And to me, that's then bringing the whole thing full circle. Then there's a take-home moment.
I love it. I know we're running out of time and I don't want to keep you for too much longer. I'd like to do a quick fire in a minute, but just finally, is there any initiatives that are coming up you can share with us? I know some you probably can't, but what does the future look like for the property?
I think using these most beautiful setting, this hotel has a great background, and I really want to highlight the most spectacular elements of it. So one of them is our Million Reasons to Say Yes, which we've just launched, which is this secret proposal that we can do, and it's set on the beach with a bottle that's found and takes you on a journey all the way up to our Imperial Suite where you enjoy this stunning cocktail, and you look down on the pool and there's a sign saying, "Will you marry me?" We've crafted that experience for the gentleman or the other partner so that we can actually be the assistant and the butler behind the scenes to make this special moment. We really think that those human touches of detail and crafting experiences are where the industry has to continue to grow. I think the physical products are great, but when you connect up the experience is where it goes to another level.
Yeah.
So it's those kind of things I'm passionate about.
Yeah. I think those personal touches are, it's a lost art sometimes in
We are
hospitality.
the storyteller. We are those creators, and that's the beauty. That's what I love about hospitality. Moving out of cooking and running hotels now, I still use the dreaming and the skill and the creative elements to run the whole business.
Yeah. A few rapid fire questions. I've really enjoyed this, by the way, Mark. Thank you so much. I'm going to skip to one that I think you'll like, given your chefing background. What's your go-to dish to cook when you want to impress someone?
So it's called the second wife dish. I think it's a one-pan dish, and it highlights technique and flavors and combinations of maybe things that weren't normally brought together back in the day. But it's a dish I did in Japan, and I actually won the heart of my current wife, which is the second wife. So it's a sautéed foie gras, and we sauté that foie gras in the pan, and the fat that comes from there, we pull out the foie gras and we leave the fat in, and we add a prawn to there. And we let that prawn take on the flavor of the foie gras. And I take a vanilla pod and scrape that and put the pod into the pan, and the roasting of the vanilla and the essence with the prawn marries in nicely together. On the side, I make a butter sauce, and I add the vanilla scraped out the pod into that sauce with some cracked pepper. And this butter sauce is a really nice balance. There's a bit of sweet and a little bit of pepper to cut back the fattiness. And then as the prawn is ready, I reintroduce the foie gras to heat it back up. And I take a piece of brioche and I add the brioche to soak up the fat. And then we add the whole thing, we build it onto the table. And we see this foie gras that's resting on the brioche with the prawn and this butter sauce that drips over the dish. And then you've got the slight bitterness of the foie gras, which marries up with the sweetness from the sauce and the vanilla, and there's beautiful vanilla aromatic notes. That's the dish that I would do.
Wow. You're making me feel pretty bad, considering I just go on to Deliveroo and do my ordering. So I think there's another lost art in actually being able to cook, one amazing meal. But that sounds amazing. I
that with some people where they don't realize that the general manager can actually cook.
Yeah,
so.
That sounds incredible. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
I'd say Escoffier, who is the godfather of cooking. I don't know whether you know about Escoffier, but Escoffier was he is the master of culinary, and he, a French chef, created the Bible of cooking that we know today. And with him, he then brought and elevated the cuisine and mastered it for all of us to share. And I think that's what gave me where I am today, my culinary roots. So I've been so lucky over the journey to have dinner and experiences with the most amazing people in the world. But I never got to be with him.
I love that. Just curious, do you interview the chefs here, and do they get nervous knowing that the GM knows exactly?
I have to, that was a part of my career where when I switched over and I know so much about it that I pulled back because I was worried that I'm going to upset that chef because I know too much. So I'll not say anything. And then the food wasn't right, or there was a mistake. And then people would be looking at me and I'd be thinking, I don't want to get into that space. So then I had to talk about it from like I said earlier, about this is the product, it's not up to standard, and this is what we need to do better with it, rather than you, the chef, not being good. How do we get better with the product? So I had to speak in the third person a little bit.
Yeah.
It was hard because you get upset. It's like any coach who's a great player.
Yeah.
They have to be very careful.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. It's kind of like that concept of teach a man how to fish and he'll be able to feed himself for life.
Exactly.
So I think being able to do teaching rather than showing is probably a better long-term strategy. It feels like you live and breathe hospitality. If I was to pull you out and say you had to work in another industry, and there's a different life for you to wake up tomorrow, what do you think it would be?
Earlier, we had to choose 3 careers when I was young, and I was a computer programmer, a chef, and a draftsman because I liked the creative. I wish I had done the computer one because it might be the next Steve Jobs. But really now it's the wellness industry.
Okay.
I'm so passionate about longevity and how I can live to 110. I used to say I want to live to 100, but now I think 110 is on the cards.
Okay.
So I want to delve into that. And food, again, something that I'm passionate about, is a connection, because that's the ingredients and that's the fuel for life, right? What we put in our body. So understanding more about that would be my journey.
Amazing. Mark, listen, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.